If you can stay consistent for 6 months, your life will look completely unrecognizable. But here's the catch. Most people don't even make it past day 6. That's the real problem. It's not your job, it's not your boss, it's not your calendar. It's the fact that you give up way before consistency has a chance to pay you back. Your job isn't what's stopping you from building a business. It's the excuses you have convinced yourself of. And I know this firsthand because I've actually lived through it. Not once, twice. So back when I was in consulting at Deloitte, there's 12-hour days, constant chaos, zero free time, and I somehow still found a way to start and grow my first profitable business. And then later, after moving to Canada and working full-time as a product leader, I scaled another business, my media house, into a multi-six-figure business on the side. Like two very different jobs, two very different contexts, but one thing stayed the same. The only growth hack that worked was consistency. If you don't know who I am, it's the first time you're seeing this face. Hey, I'm Akash, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've built businesses across food and beverage, media, consulting, and now also coffee. And the funny part, I built most of them while still holding down demanding day jobs. Like I mentioned earlier with my time at Deloitte, my first business made enough money for me to walk away from consulting for good. And the second one, the odds were against me because I did it as an immigrant after moving here to Canada and working a full-time job. And here's honestly why I share that with you. Not to brag, but to show you that this isn't just some theory. And my hope is that it gets you to also start thinking big through these stories. If you're in your late 20s or 30s and you're sick of feeling stuck in corporate and wanting to build something of your own, but telling yourself you just don't have the time, you just need to take action. I've put together something simple for you that'll actually help you get started and take action. 15 steps in 15 days to start a profitable business while you're employed. It's free, it'll always be free, and the feedback from people who have signed up has been overwhelmingly positive. Comment, email, and I'll send over the link to you. Now, if you've seen some of my previous videos, you've already heard me talk about these two phases of my life. Basically at Deloitte, I had no free time, so I carved it out by waking up at 5 a.m. and getting to office at 6 and grinding out 2 to 3 hours every morning before the work chaos swallowed me whole. Then here in Canada, as a product leader, I didn't have those quiet mornings anymore. So I had to build a system instead, which is basically 3 clear tasks every night, 2 protected work blocks each day, and a rule I still live by today. You can miss once, never twice. Basically the 2-day rule. I'd recommend checking out those videos when you're done with this, and I'll leave links to it at the end of this video. But basically what I'm trying to say is different jobs, different countries, different levels of pressure. But the common thread was that I wasn't relying on motivation anymore. And I wasn't relying on hacks either. And I was definitely not waiting for some perfect timing. And to be honest, you shouldn't either. It's like the easiest way to ensure you're not successful. So I basically just showed up every single day for months on end. And this is where the 6-month rule came in. Because at the beginning, those days looked like nothing. You know, a few small wins, a lot of invisible progress, but stacked over weeks, then over months. I think that's when the magic really happened. And so the first important piece is you need to be in the game and stay consistent for you to see any returns. And like I mentioned earlier, most people quit before they even experience that. Okay, so here's the part most people overlook: weekends. For me, weekdays were all about survival. Like I had a list I had to get through and I'd show up and do it. You know, I'd squeeze in those 90 minutes in the morning at Deloitte or those 2 deep work blocks as a PM here in Canada. But weekends, that's where I went all in. You know, I treated my Saturdays and Sundays like mini sprints. You know, I'd block out big chunks of time, 2, sometimes 3 focus sessions in a single day. I wasn't trying to work, 12 hours straight. I was picking out intentional blocks of time and focusing on one thing I need to get done by the end of the weekend. You know, I'd spend one block, working on strategy, like the bigger picture of where I wanted my business to go. Another one could be something along the lines of execution. It could be something like a landing page copy or a client outreach or something to do with my media house. And then I'd also usually have a block for analyzing, like just figuring out what worked, what didn't, and how to adjust. I think weekends become a good place for you to really gauge whether you're on track or not. And for me, usually Sundays is where I used to sit down. I still sit down and figure out what have I accomplished the week prior and what do I have to accomplish the coming week. Of course, I still carved time out for Apurva, my wife, and also spending some time with my family because back then I was in India, and even some, downtime as well. But the majority of my weekend was fuel for my future. And this rhythm, where the weekdays keeping the fire warm and the weekends basically, like pouring gasoline on it, that's what really created momentum. And again, a lot of people talk about hustle, but it's not entirely about hustling harder. It's about stacking your efforts in a way that you actually see it compound. And listen, if you're watching this and wondering, this is all great, you're giving me like a framework to work on, but what do I really do personally on those blocks? That's where people usually freeze and don't have a next step. And I think that's where I need you to actually take action. And taking action isn't easy. And like I mentioned, a simple way to get started is something I put together, which is basically 15 steps in 15 days to build a profitable business, even if you're employed. It's not the usual fluff. It's literally the step-by-step playbook I wish I had back then. Every day, one clear action that moves you closer to a real business. And yes, it's designed to fit into your weekday rhythm and your weekend sprints. It's completely free and you can unsubscribe anytime. But people who have already signed up have told me that it's given them more clarity in 2 weeks than months of, YouTube rabbit holes. The link's in the description. Save it and use it to make your weekends count. Okay, so somewhere in that weekend rhythm, something shifted. At first, I kept telling myself, I'm trying to build a side hustle. And then it became, I'm working on my startup. And then eventually, it was just, who I was. Like, I didn't need motivation anymore. And I didn't need to pump myself up every morning with some podcast or motivational video. I just showed up. Of course, I used to listen to awesome music to get me going. But because it wasn't about doing something anymore, I had actually become someone very different. Come to think of how I got there, it was all because I was taking action. A lot of people, the way they go about building a business idea or like working on something that they want to work on is they kind of come up with the perfect plan and look for the perfect time, like I mentioned earlier, and then take action. But then you're kind of relying a lot on willpower, you're relying on motivation, you're like ensuring that the stars align before you actually get going. But there's something with action. I think it's action that gives you that sort of dopamine kick, because if you get acting on it, no matter how small the task, it kind of feeds your brain dopamine, and then that kind of gets the cycle going. And that's the same thing that happened to me, because by the end of this whole thing, I wasn't really doing anything anymore. It wasn't about a side hustle. It wasn't about working on my business idea. It was just someone I had become. And that has honestly still stuck with me today. Back when I built my first startup or my first business when I was at Deloitte, and I quit my job, I pursued it, built another business and kept at it for a few years, moved to Canada, got a pretty high paying job, worked there for a few years. Through the course of doing that too, the entire identity shift was that I couldn't introduce myself as just another employee at a massive conglomerate. I had to talk about the kind of idea, the venture, the business I was working on, and that became sort of my core identity. And again, the reason I'm telling you this is because all of that came because I actually took action. It's because I actually worked on the idea. So if you're trying to figure out what's the best idea, I have no idea where to get started, pick something, focus on it for just even like 1 week. Get started. That'll either give you clarity that that business idea works or not, but more importantly, it's already kind of got the wheel spinning, and that's all you need. If you can get the ball rolling, wheel spinning, turning, whatever the that's all you need to do. Because like I said earlier, I wasn't doing something anymore. I'd become someone completely different. And I think that also ties into the real power of consistency. It stops being an activity and it becomes part of your identity. Like there are days now where if I decide to take the day off, by the end of it, I feel shitty because I didn't do any work. I don't know if that's normal or that's how I'm supposed to feel. But there are a lot of days where I'm just like, I've been grinding for like 3 months straight. I haven't taken a weekend off, and I finally decided to take the weekend off, and by the end of the weekend, I'm feeling very shitty. And I don't know if that's detrimental, because clearly there's something wrong with me there. But the way I see it is it's because of that identity shift. And so the whole hustle is only hustle if you look at it as it's hustle. If it is just part of your identity, it's just you doing what you're supposed to do every single day. And when you reach that point, it's so much easier because you're no longer asking yourself if you should work on your business today. It's just automatic and it's just who you are. Now, here's the thing I want to be brutally honest about. The first couple of months with any business, or maybe even years in some cases, they are tough. They're tough motherfuckers. You'll show up and do the work and feel like nothing's moving. It's the valley that most people can't handle. But if you push through that, around month 4 or month 5, things start clicking and things start taking form. For me, it started small, right? Like even if I were to think about everything I'm trying to do with this content here too, my entire goal is to not go viral. It's to kind of stay and build a small community, but a very intentional community where every single person wants to build something of their own. And again, this might sound very generic and it might sound like, oh, this is the same old BS over and over again, but honestly, there is some truth to cliches. Because once the momentum starts stacking, it becomes so much easier. Systems feel smoother, the business starts pulling in consistent money, and before long, in my case, I was making as much as my paycheck. This was at Deloitte. And the moment you start seeing it convert into currency or dollar value, that's when you realize, or at least in my case, that's when I realized that this isn't just some side project anymore. It's real, it's sustainable, and I could actually quit my job. The part I want to emphasize here is that that moment didn't happen because of one hack or one day or one viral post or one lucky break or something like that. It happened because I showed up every day and, like I mentioned earlier, every weekend for 6 months straight. That's when the compounding effect really took over. You won't see it at day 6, you won't see it at day 16, but you'll probably see it at month 6. So let's actually stress on what I just said there. I said that there are a lot of people that quit at day 6, day 16, and the obvious answer or extension of that is that by month 6, you'll definitely see results. And to be blatantly honest and probably ruthless and way too practical, there's a chance that you probably may not even see it at month 6. There's a chance that you might try something for years on end and it may not even bear fruits. That's a fear I still have with every single business or venture I'm part of. I think that's just part and parcel of being an entrepreneur. If you want the benefits, the freedom, everything that comes with being an entrepreneur and actually owning something of your own, then you need to accept everything that comes with the job. And this is just part and parcel of that. And like I said, most people never see the compounding. It's not because they're not talented, it's not because they're not capable, but because they stop way too soon. This is something most people go through. It's that valley, when the excitement wears off, when you feel invisible, when no one's clapping for you. That's when 95% of people give up. I heard this somewhere recently where if you look at the journey of an entrepreneur, it's usually right at the head end or the beginning of the process where you proclaim to the world that you're working on a business idea and everyone's in awe and everyone's in support of you and everyone's rooting for your success and whatnot. That's the first 2%. Then the next time people really pay heed and actually support you is in the last 5% where you have started seeing success and you've kind of made it and you're growing and people just can't not notice you. But this entire valley or whatever's in between is where you're freaking alone in the arena and trying to get shit done. That part no one talks about. That part is where most people give up. Because like I said, why the hell would you be consistent and kind of really grind through things where you're not even seeing any results or you're not seeing any feedback? And the reason why that works is because with most businesses that do eventually make it, it's small, minute progress, and then all of a sudden it starts shooting up. That's where you kind of see hockey stick growth and almost like exponential growth when it comes to businesses. And like I said, that's where 95% of people give up. Maybe you have tried something yourself before and you just couldn't get it to take form. And then you're kind of watching this and figuring out how to get there. But the funny thing was, that's the journey for most people. I didn't see any results from my first business for the first 4 or 5 months. I saw nothing. On the contrary, I actually spent a lot more money trying to get the business off the ground. If I were to go back and actually scale that first business of mine, I'd have so many other ways. I could have 1, saved money, 2, actually grown it far quicker, and 3, because I'm kind of like a media and a marketing expert now, I can actually use that to my benefit. But the point I'm trying to make is there were months and months where I was just alone in the trenches, not knowing whether this is going to take form, whether this is going to go anywhere. But by month 6 or month 7, I could actually see some progress. I could actually see some money coming in. None of that would be possible if I didn't grind it out the first few months. And that's something most people are just not willing to do. And so the truth is, you don't need more hours in the day. You don't need perfect motivation. You just need to outlast your excuses long enough for the compounding to kick in. That's the real growth hack. And it's the only one that actually works. If I haven't dropped enough truth bombs, here's one more that I feel more people should internalize. You can absolutely build something meaningful while you're employed, while you're tired, while you're figuring things out. But you have to stop waiting for motivation to strike. Motivation is a liar, motivation is a bitch. It shows up when it wants to and it disappears the second things get tough. What gets you moving and gives you momentum isn't motivation. It's actually rhythm. It's action. It's deciding once that you're going to show up no matter what, every single day or every weekend or whatever the cadence is, and letting that decision carry you. And that's what I honestly mean when I say consistency is the only growth hack that works. Because once it becomes part of who you are, you stop negotiating with yourself, You just do it because It's part of your identity. It's like brushing your teeth. It's like showing up for work, except this time you're showing up for your own dream and building something of your own. That feeling is freaking crazy. And listen, if you've been watching this and you're serious about building your own profitable business or anything that's your own, it could even be content, it could be anything, don't just walk away with inspiration. Like, take the first step. Like I said, the last thing I want you to do is just listen to this, try and like think about it, and then you move on to the next video. That doesn't help anyone. Thinking, ideating, planning, any person can do that. Every Tom, Dick and Harry is doing that. What I want you to do is take action. And like I mentioned earlier, I put together a free guide called 15 Steps in 15 Days to Start a Profitable Business, even if you're employed. In the whole spectrum of growing your business, a lot of people try to apply what they learn at their corporate job to, starting up a business. But that really doesn't work. And so instead, the way I've approached this is basically unconventional tips or unconventional things you can do that will get you to actually take action. It's bite-sized and it's built to get you out of that whole thinking about it phase and into actually doing things. It's completely free and it'll always be free, and you can unsubscribe anytime. The link's down below. You can comment, email, or you can check out the first link in the description. Grab it today and start your 15-day sprint. Because here's the thing, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. So if this video helped, hit the subscribe button and share it with someone who needs this, and I'll see you in the next one. Here's another reminder, none of this works until you show up. So show up for yourself.